Number 10. The SMURL haunting. I know what you're thinking, it was already done. Considering it was one of their most famous cases, but surprisingly, it hasn't really been made into a movie as part of the current universe. The 1991 film The Haunting left something to be desired, so why not try again? Could it be that the name SMURL doesn't really sound that scary? Maybe. Well, the story itself is. The haunting took place in the 1970s when the family started experiencing outrageous technical mishaps, such as their TV spontaneously combusting and toilets flushing by themselves, which could be handy depending on the day you're having. But then lingering terrible odors like sulfur and strange knocking that would always come in threes started plaguing the family. The odors would even make the family ill and would be swiftly followed by sightings. When the Warrens finally arrived, they discovered the presence of 3 different malevolent demons. Even with 3 different exorcisms, the demons kept coming back, so maybe change the name. But this has a franchise written all over it.
Coming in at number 9, we have The Other Doll. So the Warrens have a number of creepy ass dolls that are possessed by demons, not just Annabelle. Let's take a look at some of these terrifying dolls. First up, we got this lovely doll with no mouth. Not gonna lie, it looks like a kid's paper mache craft. But that hair looks a little too real, let's hope it's not. Then we have this doll. I didn't think we could get any worse, but whew, I was wrong. Okay, her eyes are horrifying, they literally just stole my soul. And last but not least, we got this gem. Because who doesn't love clowns, am I right? All of these dolls are apparently haunted by different demons, but that's all we know about them. The rest is a mystery. Moving on to number 8, we have the Succubus demon. Succubus is a demon that is said to take the form of an attractive female in order to trick and seduce men. It's common for men to be visited by this demon in their dreams. Well, while investigating the SMURL family haunting, Ed came in contact with a succubus demon. Both Ed and Lorraine tried to remove this demon from the SMURL family's home, but actually failed to do so. That's when they had to call in Pope Benedict XVI for help. And they performed a ritual exorcism of the house. Maybe that's why we didn't know about this, because the Warrens failed at removing the demon and needed help. That must have been pretty embarrassing. In our 7th spot, we have the haunted house. The BORLEY Rectory is said to be one of the most haunted places in England. It was built in 1862 but sadly was damaged by a fire in 1939, and by 1944 the whole thing was demolished. Now here's the thing. Before it was demolished, it was said to be extremely haunted. People would hear footsteps and see ghostly apparitions of a nun and a phantom coach. In fact, when Lorraine Warren visited the church, this is when she encountered the real-life demon that inspired Valak. While there, she also saw a headless demon monk walking around that left cryptic messages on the walls. And also, they saw ghostly nuns walking around at night. That's when the Warrens hired a bunch of photographers to help capture evidence of these demons. They ended up encountering the ghost of a nun, or demon nun. She was a real-life woman that got buried alive in the brick walls after having an affair with a monk. So there were multiple ghosts and demons at this church that the Warrens encountered, which were not publicized by them. Fun fact though, the Warrens kept a brick from this demolished church in their museum, cause why not, you know, memories, a little souvenir. In our 6th spot today, we have the Pearls of Death demon. This simple pearl necklace is said to be one of the most dangerous items in the Warrens museum. And honestly, it's the most beautiful. Doesn't it make you just want to pick it up and put it on? Well, don't, ever. This necklace is incredibly cursed and is said to strangle anyone who wears it. Basically, it all started when a woman was given this necklace. She put it on and claims that it felt like someone was strangling her to death. People around her had to actually yank the necklace off of her to save her. It was a near-death experience. It's believed that this necklace was used in incantations or rituals, or even was used as a holy relic to Satan worshippers. So now it's possessed by some sort of demon that wants to kill anyone who wears it. The Warrens again chose not to go that public with this necklace, because it might tempt people to visit the museum and put it on for themselves. And obviously they don't want people dying at their hands. We are now at our 5th and halfway mark with the Union Cemetery Ghost. Now this one is a bit different than the other ghosts and demons on today's list, and that's because the Warrens kept this ghost a secret because it was fake. There wasn't actually a ghost. Let me explain. So according to a legend, there's a lady in white that haunts Union Cemetery in Easton, Connecticut. She was apparently the victim of betrayal by her lover, and she died either by taking her own life when she was heartbroken, or she was actually killed by her lover. Well, Ed was determined to capture her on tape, and enlisted his secret, not so secret lover, Penny, for help. So in the summer of 1990, Ed apparently camped out in the cemetery for a week trying to make contact with this ghost, and it was a fail. The two then faked a video of the lady in white, which was just Penny wearing white. Anyways, he went on to make great claims that he made contact with this ghost, but hardly any evidence was provided, just a few shadow ghosts on video, which was Penny. People were questioning the authenticity of this video, and he kinda was like, hey, let's just, forget about this, and then they just never talked about it again. Coming in at number 4, we have the Donovan family. In the 70s, the Donovan family was haunted by a very malevolent demon. It started off how it normally does. The family would hear loud noises coming from inside their walls. Eventually, things would happen like blood would pour out from their taps, and they would hear animalistic growls coming from within their house. The Warrens were sent in to investigate, and turns out that the daughter, Patty Donovan, used an Ouija board and was communicating with a spirit that claimed it was a young boy. Clearly, it was a demon in disguise as a young boy. After learning that, the Warrens called for a priest and they exorcised the house from evil. But how come this case wasn't as well known as the others? Why were they trying to keep it a secret? Seems suspicious. What were they hiding? In our third spot, we have the Antonellis. This is another innocent family that was terrorized by evil. It all started back in February of 1966, when the Antonelli family started experiencing some paranormal visitors. Miss Antonelli was the first to see it. She was about to doze off when she got a feeling that someone was in the room with her. She opened her eyes and saw a massive gray mist with 4 distinct appendages. She turned on the light and the figure disappeared. For years, this figure tormented her, and no one believed her. That was until it started tormenting her husband, and he was all like, WTF is going on? The house really is haunted. Sorry, sweetie, but I believe you now. I don't know if he actually said that, but it probably was something along those lines. Anyways, the Warrens were eventually called in and they conducted a seance. That's when they discovered a number of dark things happened at that house. Some of it was so disturbing that it's believed they wanted to try and keep this case a secret because of the home's gruesome past. Apparently, a young girl became pregnant by a neighbor. Her baby was then killed and buried in the cellar. That's just some of the dark things that happened there that the Warrens were willing to share. Moving on to number 2, we have the exorcism gone wrong. In the early 2000s, Ed and Lorraine Warren traveled to Japan to check out these so-called haunted tunnels, where a number of people mysteriously died in. But they got more than they bargained for, because while in Japan, they were called in to do an exorcism on a young girl named Teresa. There was a demon inside of her fighting to take control of her body. In fact, Teresa didn't speak a word of English, but during the exorcism, she spoke fluently. The leaked footage of the exorcism shows Teresa trying to fight back against the demon. But a number of people don't think it went too well. Even if you Google the case, no information comes up. So many fans believe that poor Teresa lost her life to this demon, which is why the Warrens kept this a big secret. And in our number 1 spot today, we have the Shadow Doll. I'm gonna start by saying that Annabelle looks like nothing compared to this doll. Seriously, its appearance alone is horrifying. Way creepier than that Raggedy Ann Annabelle doll. Anyways, according to the Warrens, this doll was used in a number of satanic rituals. In fact, the doll itself is composed of human and animal bones and black magic. Then, one of the rituals went wrong, or went right, because the doll became possessed by a demon, and it's super powerful. Rumor has it that if you take a picture of the doll, then it will latch onto you and visit you in your dreams. The dreams will be so bad that you'll either have a heart attack and die, or never want to sleep ever again. In fact, according to the Warrens, this demon doll has been responsible for a number of deaths. So the doll was first for sale in an antique shop, and a couple decided to buy it. I'm gonna stop myself right there. I don't know what possessed this couple to buy the doll. Probably the demon possessed them and convinced them it was a good idea, because who the hell would look at this thing and be like, huh, that's a great little fun-loving doll, isn't it cute? No! Anyways, the couple began to experience intense and horrifying nightmares. They later found out that they were having identical nightmares, and one night the husband woke up with huge gash marks on his back. They linked this all back to the doll and got rid of it. Now, since this demon is so powerful, the Warrens obviously didn't want to tell people about it, because then the media would go on a frenzy and take photos of it, and then the demon doll would curse all them. So they hid it away in their museum for as long as they could.
Kicking off the list at number 10, Pearls of Death. If you've seen Annabelle Comes Home, the first item on today's list should ring a familiar bell. The character Daniela in the film, she tries to communicate to a loved one beyond the grave. Now, in order to do so, she puts on the museum's mourning bracelet. That's a big no-no. Yeah, we don't touch things in haunted museums, my friends. Now, there isn't a mourning bracelet in the real occult museum, but there is such thing as the Pearls of Death. Those are very real. Those are also lovely, might I add. These pearls were added to the museum after a woman claimed they were strangling her as soon as she put them on. Yeah, the second this poor woman put these pearls on, she needed people around her to help yank the pearls from her neck. It felt like they were choking her to death. Yeah, these haunted pearls have nothing on Martha Wayne. Nothing.
Number 9. Vampire coffins. The Warrens Occult Museum infamously held some of the world's most dangerous demons. As a fan of the occult genre, I am itching for Ed and Lorraine to take on some kind of vampire tale, as they do have vampire coffins in their museum. So what's the story behind them, right? Like where did it come from? Most people associate the Warrens with tales of possession and poltergeist, but what about those of the toothy variety? Did they believe in them? Have they fought them before? Well, apparently the one they had in their possession was used by a real life vampire, and the couple insisted that they're real. So guys, Warren versus Dracula? Come on, film world, bring back some scary vampires. I'm in. Got my stakes ready. Number 8. Pearls of Death. Sadly, the museum I mentioned before is currently closed due to Lorraine's passing, which might be a good thing depending on how you look at it, because who's taking care of those items is my question. There are more things in there with nefarious past than your mom's bin of leftovers, the Pearls of Death being the most famous. These sound like they came straight out of Borgin and Burke's from Harry Potter. It is said that whoever wore them was strangled to death by whatever demon possessed them. Talk about clutching your pearls. How did these pearls come into their possession? Not much is known about their background, but that hasn't stopped horror writers before. Either they tie them into the Conjuring universe or build an entirely different story. I definitely think there is some untapped potential here. So let's get after it. Number 7, the Shadow Doll. Now, Patrick Wilson has already done a whole series of films based on nightmares. Insidious, another favorite of mine. But Patrick, what's one more? I think we all want to know more about the Shadow Doll, another terrifying object from their museum. This doll is literally the stuff of nightmares. The story goes that the doll slithers into your mind while you sleep and morphs your dreams into nightmares so terrifying they can stop your heart. It also looks way more frightening than the real Annabelle doll itself, which I personally think has run its course. Why not introduce another haunted doll to the directory of reasons we shouldn't own them, right? The Shadow Doll should absolutely be next on the list. We've got Chucky, Annabelle, the Shadow Doll. Perfect. Let's go. Number 6, Maurice Theroux. We're basically halfway there with this story. This story is already turned into a book and the movie should be next. Satan's Harvest by Ed and Lorraine tells the story of his possession and his Catholic exorcism. It's a really odd story with a lot of layers filmmakers could peel back to reveal an outstanding film. Maurice Theroux didn't have a very healthy childhood due to the cruelty of his father. He developed a lot of trauma specifically due to a particular obscene event in a barn, which definitely affected his mental well-being. So he prayed for salvation, which he believed he received. Maurice reported growing physically very strong, and he suddenly seemed to know things he shouldn't. When he finally settled down with his own family, he was finally considered normal and to all accounts very kind. But then he started losing chunks of his memory, and small fires started to appear across the town. Maurice committed several heinous crimes, including attempting to take his wife's life, and he also attempted suicide. But the strangest things about this are the multiple accounts of people seeing him in 2 different places at the same time. The story doesn't end here, and I'm sure the movie wouldn't either. Number 5, The Apprentice.
People used to be afraid to say stuff. I don't want somebody to think I'm nuts. That's what you would always hear. Now it is the fact where people are looking and they're searching. They want the answers.
2 words, John Zaffis. Of course, Ed and Lorraine are the names we all know and love, but what about the man on the sidelines? What did he see? John Zaffis was Ed's nephew who became a paranormal expert in his own right. He has over 43 years of experience going head to head with the demonic and the depraved. He has appeared on multiple television and radio shows to discuss cases and collects rare haunted artifacts like that of his uncle. As he got his start with the Warrens, it would be interesting to see a series of films that branch off from them, perhaps in an entirely different universe, so Who knows? Number 4, the Southend werewolf. Again, yes, this is what I am waiting for. I mentioned wanting to see them tackle vampires. Werewolves, they have to be next, and there is already a case that exists. Half the work is already done. Now we just need Hollywood to do its thing, make some magic happen. The Southend werewolf surrounds a man named Bill Ramsey who, when he was just 9, ripped a fence post out of the ground. When he got older, his possession caused him to admit himself to a hospital due to chest pains which he interpreted as a heart attack. While the nurse was checking on him, he fell into a rampage where people described his appearance to be very dog-like. Doctors couldn't diagnose a mental illness that suited his symptoms, so he sought help from Ed and Lorraine. He went to the US, and there they performed an exorcism that cured him, but not before several people witnessed him turn halfway into a wolf. Like, come on, this could be the next best werewolf film since Ginger Snaps, right? Like, though wildly different, very different from that movie. Number 3, the West Point haunting. Ghosts in the military? I bet producers are just waiting to pull this story into the universe, and I agree. Make it a movie on its own, why don't you? In the 70s, of course, the Warrens were called into a military academy in West Point, New York. Officers were complaining that they saw moving objects around the cabin and couldn't explain them. Lorraine sensed 2 spirits, one by the name of an Irish cook named Molly. She was particularly fond of knocking over bottles of wine and messing up freshly made beds. Then there was another named Greer who was the spirit of a Buffalo soldier turned murderer. See, this is where it gets darker. The man was tried, but there are no records of what happened to him after the trial. See? A mystery fitting for the Conjuring universe to expand and explore? Maybe Molly puts secret messages in the stew? Who knows? Number 2, Borley Church. This is already a drama. Now we just need the flair of Patrick Wilson and Vera Farmiga. It's also the closest reference to The Nun, but they are not directly related, which is why I think this deserves an actual retelling. The origin story of the haunting is so sad. In the 14th century, a monk fell in love with a nun at a nearby convent, and the two broke their vows and carried out an illicit affair. When they were finally caught, they were punished viciously. Far too cruelly, I should add. The monk was hanged, and the nun suffered the fate of, like, the cask of Amontillado. She was bricked up alive behind a wall, all for falling in love. This is the church where the idea for the nun arose, as Lorraine reported feeling a dark presence, and later a dark shadow in the shape of a nun was photographed near her. So I know they've done the whole nun story to death, so the whole Borley Church story might not fit in the narrative, but as a standalone, why not? Last but not least, Ed Warren's origin story, right? Okay, so this isn't actually a case file, but Ed has stated repeatedly that the reason he got into paranormal research was because of his upbringing. We've had little glimpses into his past throughout the film series, but what about a whole movie about it? Ed didn't want anyone else going through what he did, but what happened? At the age of only 5, Ed saw a glowing orb in the horrific image of a woman's face come out of his closet. The couple met when they were really young, and Lorraine didn't initially believe in ghosts, so what happened to change your mind? It would be fascinating to see an origin story for the couple that became the figurehead of the paranormal.
Starting off this countdown, we have the toy monkey. You may recognize this little demon monkey from the Conjuring universe. It made a little cameo in the movie Annabelle Comes Home. Anyways, apparently this monkey is possessed by a demon that enjoys stalking its victims before murdering them. That is absolutely horrifying. Why isn't this more well known? Now, there is good news to this. Apparently it's no longer haunted. It was blessed by them and now stored safely in their museum. But before it was blessed, they told no one about this demon monkey.
Number 9, Cursed Mirror. The amount of movies I watched growing up where the killer was in the reflection of the mirror and they close it nice and slowly. So scary. Reflections are scary in horror movies and apparently in real life as well. There's a cursed mirror in the occult museum and its history is pretty haunting. The previous owner was a man in New Jersey and he liked to spend hours and hours every single night trying to beckon spirits through this mirror. He was desperately trying to contact loved ones that have passed away, which is tragic, but I don't think sitting in front of a mirror asking for spirits is best for your mental health, you know? There's other ways to cope. A few weeks passed and faces eventually did appear. Haunting, demonic faces, so terrifying that it sent the man into a mental institution. How sad is that? This type of conjuring is called crystalmancy. It's when a spirit possesses a shiny object, like a window, a mirror, a pocket watch, you name it. If it's shiny, chances are it's haunted. Who knows? As I'm looking into the reflection of this teleprompter, I'm like, oops. Number 8, werewolf paw. In Annabelle Comes Home, we see in the museum a werewolf paw sitting on a shelf. And then later on in the movie, we see a real werewolf outside of the Warrens' house. Now, this is most likely a nod to a London case involving the Warrens, where a man was behaving like a werewolf. Yeah, he would just flip like that and become one. Not physically or anything, he wouldn't grow hair or teeth, but he used his fingers like claws, and he would growl and there'd be saliva dripping from his face, and of course, sadly, he attacked people on the streets of London, so it was the real deal. Everyone's calling everyone trying to figure this out. This man was William Ramsay, and the Warrens believed this to be the same spirit responsible for transforming humans into wolves. In 1989, the solution was for Ed and Lorraine Warren to bring Bill to the States, then performed an exorcism, turning the man back into his, regular, less growly self. Could there be a real wolf paw in the museum responsible for the Werewolf of London case? Probably. Most likely. All signs point to yes. Number 7, the organ. Music is said to bring life into the room, but this time it's a bit too literal. Just a bit. There's an organ in the Occult Museum that belonged to Ed and Lorraine Warren for a while after they found it in, of course, a haunted house. Authorities cleaned it out and reached out to Ed to see what he wanted to do with such a thing, and after a few nights he heard the organ start to play by itself. Dum dum dum. So scary. In total, there were 3 incidents where Ed thought somebody had broke into the museum. He heard the organ being played, but by the time he arrived, the room was empty. Nothing had been touched. There were no visitors, of course, and the organ just happened to stop. So scary. A priest came to bless the museum and the music eventually did stop. Before her passing, Lorraine Warren said to USA Today that the prayers do work in this museum and that they blind the evil, much like an electric fence does for a dog. Tony Spera, son-in-law of the late demonologists Ed and Lorraine Warren, he's now watching the museum full-time and he doesn't ever intend to destroy or leave any of the items in the museum. He's gonna take care of those. Thanks, Tony. Thank you. You're literally doing the Lord's work. Number 6, cursed brick. Perhaps one of the least terrifying items on this list is a brick from Borley Rectory, aka a brick from one of the most haunted houses in all of England. Lovely, we love that brick. This house was originally built back in 1862. It was built for the rector of Borley, but after a fire in 1939, it was never the same again. And then it was finally demolished in 1944. But before its final days, the Daily Mirror printed about this haunted house. Harry Price, a paranormal researcher at the time, reported sightings of a ghost nun or a ghost car that would happen to drive by, as well as footsteps and unexplained sounds on the property. Yeah, a little piece of the haunted home now sits in the Warren Occult Museum today. Just a nice, scary brick. Didn't know those were a thing. Number 5, the wedding dress. Your wedding dress is supposed to remind you of the best day of your life. So what's this dress doing in the Warrens Occult Museum? What's the history behind this one? The dress, once it was on, would possess the owner and make them attack their significant other. While that part is made up for the Hollywood side of the story, the real dress supposedly belonged to the White Lady of Union Graveyard, Connecticut. The real dress comes from 2009, so it's pretty recent as far as hauntings go. Route 59 is also a hot spot when it comes to spotting the spirit of the White Lady. Yeah, she'll just appear on the road while you're driving and then scare the shit out of you. I can't even read a billboard while I drive, let alone spot a ghost. That's crazy. The hand-eye coordination for that? No way. I'd miss all those ghosts. Number 4, black magic dolls. Okay, before we get to that doll on our list, we have some honorable mentions who keep her company in the Occult Museum. We love that. Tony Spera believes there's a voodoo doll just casually sitting around in this museum. Yeah, there's a doll that looks like it would resemble somebody, and historically, if you do this, add some dark magic, some voodoo to the mix, you can actually harm the person the doll is representing. I'm not sure who this is, but I hope they're okay. It doesn't look like a comfortable situation in that glass case. Also, the glass case around the voodoo doll has me convinced, more than anything. There's also a doll with no mouth in the museum. That's awesome. Bet she's full of secrets behind that non-mouth. There's another doll that has markings on her face. She has big eyes, this time mouth included. We love those, always able to talk back with the demonic voice. Then there's a silly clown looking doll. And by silly, I mean equally as haunting. Number 3, the Annabelle doll. Yeah, we can't have a list on cursed objects in the Warren Museum and not mention the movie star herself, the Annabelle doll. Here she is, fabulous. Her appearance was made to look even more haunting in the movie, but I'd argue that the real doll and the real deal is much creepier. Yeah, the real-life Raggedy Ann doll was accurately represented in the movies, says Tony Spera. See, back in the 70s, a nurse was given the Raggedy Ann doll from her mother, so these two nurses were living together in Hartford, Connecticut, and they both reported the doll moving around on its own. Things got serious when they discovered a piece of parchment paper that said "Help me" written in crayon. That's terrifying. Then the doll began to move in front of their very eyes one morning during breakfast. Yeah, Annabelle's arms just lifted onto the table. And then they freaked out. They immediately called the psychic, and the psychic told the nurses that Annabelle was a spirit stuck in the doll. I grew up watching Chucky. I don't do dolls, okay? Haunted or not, hard pass. Any doll. No thank you. Even Buzz Lightyear, I'm like, nope. Number 2. Music box. We had to include one of the creepiest elements of the Conjuring movie, the parent family music box. Here we go. Director James Wan wanted to use the music box in the first film because, well, like I said earlier, mirrors are creepy. They add for great suspense in movies, all that jazz. But also, this was a real haunted artifact that's in the real museum today, so it's not made up just for spooks. The music box part of the movie actually scared the shit out of me. Like I said, any mirror scene, I can't do it. I just eat my hoodie. I just hide in whatever I'm wearing. They always do it slow too, and there's always like the slow Jack in the Box music. Is this real? This is all real. These poor girls. Specifically April, the youngest of the parent children, she found this antique in the house, and she used it to communicate to another spirit named Rory. Yeah, just a spirit named Rory. He sounds friendly. Rory, nice. In the movie, this was a happy ending, but in real life, the Bathsheba Sherman curse was never resolved. Which leads us to our big bad, number 1. Number 1, the photograph of Bathsheba Sherman. You always see these UFO videos or ghost photos or footage, whatever. They're always filmed with a BlackBerry curve. It's just absolute rubbish. It's nothing, it's just grainy, you can't tell what you're looking at. There's never clear evidence of anything nowadays at all. Until now. Yeah, we may just have a clear photo with the real witch, the real Bathsheba Sherman. The witch in the original Conjuring film. We have a picture of her. This is so scary. Do you want to see it? Let's look at it. Of course we're ending on this note, here we go. This photo is from the parent family farmhouse, back when it was still the Arnold estate. This was 1885, so the witch was most likely in her 70s at this time, and this witch lived next door to the farm, and although we never really will find out, many believe she's the lady in the middle, closest to the camera. Also the fact that she's wearing some sort of mask and she's standing by herself, all black. I'm getting witch vibes just from this one photo alone. I also feel like nobody wanted to stand next to a literal witch in a photo, so it's kind of obvious who's who in this one. I couldn't blame them. Imagine doing a silly one with Bathsheba Sherman. You're like, hey, bunny ears, don't curse me, awesome.